So we were talking before we started the recording here, and we're reading some quotes from Robert Bly, who wrote the book Iron John, and it takes me back to when I was, how old was I? 19 maybe 20, and I was living by myself in actually first time by myself in a large apartment in a really old building in downtown Salt Lake. I lived above a bar, and the ceiling was maybe like 12 to 14 foot high, just like huge ceilings. And I would it was often just cold there, and I would wear these boots and my overcoat, and I'd listen to jazz, and the floor was like a black and white checkered tile floor, and the people staying in the place, like, they were mostly like older people, and I don't know, it was just this really interesting time in my life. And one night I bought this book Iron John by Robert Bly, and I started reading, and if I had to tell you much about the book right now, like, I couldn't, but I know it had this profound effect on me, and I stayed up reading all night. And there was a part in the book where he talks about this town, and there's a wild man off in the wilderness. And the sense is like this giant, like, wild man that no one knows. And the people in the town are afraid to go into the wilderness. And the wild man, like, a ball bounces into the town square, and a boy picks it up, and he looks in the direction of where it came from, and he's like, whoa, what's out there? What's out there? Who's out there? And the sense is like the who that's out there is the wild him, in a way. And anyway, I read this book all night, and the sun started coming up. And this was spring, maybe March, still snow on the ground, for sure snow up in the mountains. And I walk out onto my balcony, and I remember looking up towards the mountains. And I just had this sense of wanting to take on an epic challenge, head into the wilderness, take on an epic challenge, and know myself in a new way. And he talks in this book really about being an elder, about what is to be a man, and an elder is one who helps usher the younger men into manhood. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly my thinking, but I said to myself, all right, I'm going to run, and I was not a runner. I'm going to run from here without stopping up to the top of one of those mountains. And those mountains covered in snow. And I was alive by the challenge, and I put on my tennis shoes, laced them up, and I took off. And it's quite a ways to go through the valley, and little by little you're starting to go up like the side of the mountain, and up past the University of Utah, and then up into the canyon. And I think it was the first real time that I ran. And I tracked it off later for it to be about 10 miles up, It wasn't like 10 miles like this, but 10 miles like slowly going up. And as it started getting harder and harder, something that came to my mind was, and this pain I'm feeling, this is for the pain that so-and-so caused me. And it can sound like a little bit like a victim mentality, but it was absolutely anything but. It was like, in the face of that, here I am, And then in the face of that, here I am. And I just thought of like everything in my like my teen years and whatever that gave me pain, or that had me hurt, or stopped me, or slowed me down, or seemed to be in my way, or gave me fear. It was like I just brought up every one of them, and then I just kept running into it. And I got up to where the road just like leveled out, and it's still going through the canyons, but it leveled out, and I realized because there's like not exactly a peak here, and so I looked to the side of the road, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna take off, and go up until it doesn't go up anymore. And I start climbing, and like I literally have to climb, and it's about 1.5 feet of snow. Let me see, yeah, about 1.5 feet of snow, and I'm just in tennis shoes and sweatpants. And, and I'm having to try to find things to grab onto, and I just go, and I keep going, I'm like, and it's this very like cathartic kind of symbolic thing for me in my life. And because at that point in time, I've said no to school. I've said no to, the Mormon path, essentially. I've said no to the path that all of my people follow to become a man, get married in the temple, all these things that you do if you're gonna become a respected man in that tradition. Yeah. Go on a mission, all that. So, this is like a very symbolic challenge for me. And I get to where it's not going up anymore. And I'm standing in the snow, and I'm looking out over the entire like Salt Lake Valley down below, and I dig down through the snow, and I try to find like a sharp rock. I can't find one. I got a dull rock, and I dig and I scratch, an X into my arm, because I want something to mark this moment, this day, and I draw blood in the form of an X, and then I take off a piece of clothing. I think it was a sock, one of the socks I was wearing. I dip it in the blood, and then I tie it around one of the branches on the tree up there to mark that I was there, and then I shout out across the valley, just like. I don't know if I said any words in particular, but I just shout out, and you can hear it echo across the valley. Just like, I just let everything out. And then I walked home. I walked back down the side through the snow, and then back the 10 miles. And that day was a formative day of when like I knew myself in a new way, because I went beyond what I knew I could ever do. And yeah, and that was probably one of the things that really ingrained to me the power of taking on a challenge that seems almost impossible. Like who you know yourself to be up till now isn't someone who can do that.
Right.
There's something magical about that.
Man, I don't know where we're going with this, but the last, like if we're talking about Into the Wild, if we're talking about solitude, but I had stories, as you're starting this story, I remember going alone, studying, but for the first time living alone. Well, I was alone at 16, but I was staying in boarding school, so I wasn't really alone. And 18, go to university, and really feel the joy of like, this is me alone now, and I gotta make this work. I remember sitting in this. I had a very small room. It was in European they say mansarda, which means the window is on top. It's not like this, so it's the top of a building, and the joy of like making this work in a new city, of
so you're in an apartment with a window on the top. I'm not getting it.
Yeah, it's like they call it in Dutch they would call it a kot, which means it's like a student room. It's a room basically. It's a room. And,
on the very top of a building.
Yes. And that's where I was going to study and do my 4 years of.
That's great, man. I love those like rooftop places.
Oh man, That I didn't have a great view. I just saw the stars, you know.
Oh,
It was
the
like
ceiling
this,
was glass.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Not the ceiling, but like if this is the house and this is the roof, you know, I'm really at the top underneath the thing, and there's a window here, you know. And it was small, but just that joy of like alone in a new city,
Yes.
trying to make it work is just so great.
Yes.
And then I heard you talk about the book, and I remember, this is a different thing, I remember reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac. And
When you were about that age?
even younger, I think, yeah, or about that age, a bit younger, and just see the travel. There's many more miles to go, and the jazz music, and they were sweaty. And I remember reading that and thinking, wow, fuck, you know, like to go out, and then you end with the challenges. And I thought about. I participated in the World Championship mountain biking, which is marathon mountain biking, and it's open for the public also. These are the top riders that are riding, and you can do the same distance, or you can do shorter ones. And a lot of people take the shorter ones, and I took the 90 kilometers. I never forget, 90 kilometers, and it was 5,000 meters of elevation, which is, it means 10% on average, and I was in the saddle for like 8 hours that day. And it's just cursing the mountain, and it was just, I was riding my bike since 1 year, and I thought, fuck, I can't make it, it's too much, you know. And then you just keep going, and I remember the feeling of having the last downhill and thinking, fuck, I want to make this. And really the elation that you feel from that,
Yes.
and you feel like, fuck, I can take this on now.
Yes.
You know? Something like this is just so, yeah. Such a fantastic feeling.
Yeah, and honor is a part of that feeling. You know, it's the reflection of you having faced it all and stood for something. You know, that's the feeling that's generated with that view. And then there's also the pride, the victory, right? So it's the pride and the honor, plus all the endorphins, right? It's all of that. And then there's like a new view of what's possible opens up, because it's not the same you.
Yes.
You don't see yourself in the same way. Wow, I can do these kind of things, and then you look out to the other mountains around you, and you can see yourself summiting those, and you can see like in your future, and it's a bigger world. It's more available, and because you're a bigger man, and so your vision is also transformed. You know, when you talk about the taking a stand in the face of the standing for, and then going into the vision. This is the purpose of it. Part of the purpose of it is not just about the honor, but the vision that we see from day to day, is given by who we've been in the face of the challenges in our life. So if we spent the past day or two or week not facing everything, but really avoiding things, when we look to our future, that's the us that we project into our future. And we're not cognizant of this. We're not even really cognizant of like what our vision is, but this is happening all the time. And it's a much less powerful vision if we've been compromising, if we've been not facing everything. So to come back to standing and then go into vision, it's a much bigger, more powerful vision that calls us to keep standing like that. But coming back from the work, let's talk about some of those other experiences of being alone. You know, our young friend in California who we've been talking to, he wants to lose his virginity. You know, he really wants to lose his virginity. And for sure, that's like a mark of like, wow, once he can do that, he probably sees he can have a future with women and all kinds of things. But this will be the kind of determining thing that like it changes who he is and opens up a whole new world and everything like this. But there's also something, and this is another Robert Bly quote that he wrote, that you know that we read this morning. And he's talking about, he says, "What does it mean when a man falls in love with a radiant face across the room? It may mean that he has some soul work to do. His soul is the issue. Instead of pursuing the woman and trying to get her alone away from her husband, He needs to go alone himself, perhaps to a mountain cabin for 3 months, write poetry, canoe down a river, and dream. That would save some women a lot of trouble.
And husbands.
And husbands. And I think in part what he's speaking to is men who've not cultivated that rich beauty in their soul, that rich alone time. Like I think of men who are maybe living someone else's life, or they're not really living their own life. And so they're trying to, in a way, get things outside of them.
Yes.
Whether it's the woman, or it's the money, or it's something outside of them to fill the emptiness. And I remember as we were reading that, how beautiful and how much it calls to me, you know, just the idea of going alone to a mountain cabin for a period of months, writing poetry, canoeing down a river, and dreaming. And it's been a while since maybe I've had that kind of experience. To an extent, in nature.
Yes.
And I think back to my youth. But it's not entirely true, because I went alone to Africa several months ago. And I did spend a week with, you know, my Maasai brother Comyn, who often watches these Facebook Lives, and his family. And went on walks alone out into the wilderness, where there's actually like giraffe and elephant and lions. And I lived for a time with a Kenyan girl in her tiny little place up in northern Kenya, near Mount Kenya. And it was very much the experience of being alone, even though I wasn't alone. But if I go back to my youth, from that after that climb up the mountain, and that day when I confronted God, basically, I may have shared that on one of these Ronin podcasts, and I found this feeling of honor that I've come to know as honor. I then was so curious about the world. How is the world really, and who am I? And I set everything aside. I said, you know, I'm not going to go pursue a career. I'm not going to pursue school. I'm going to go on a quest to discover, like, what is this world? Who am I? Like, I called it I thought about it like a truth quest.
It's not strange that in some societies, communities, the rite of passage for a boy is exactly that: to go alone into the wilderness,
Yes.
survive it, and then you can come back to go alone into the wild.
Yes. And for me, there was a period of maybe 3 or 4 years where, I was often I would go alone. I put a camper on the back of my truck. Sometimes I would go down to south, down towards Galveston, the beach. And I'd just be like living out of the back of my truck, where I'd bring a tent and I'd camp out on the beach, you know, making a fire, making my own food. And sometimes I'd go off into the mountains and just camp, and I'm by myself. But there's the experience of like living out of the camper.
But it's going, like, imagine this, anyone watching, ask yourself, have you ever gone on a trip by yourself? Like, on a trip by yourself. Get out there and explore by yourself. That alone it can be transformative. Transformative,
and, you know, touch upon like a beauty of being alone.
Yes.
That, I mean, our friend in California might not know.
Yes.
You know? And I don't know. Man. He may be a virgin in that way. You know? Like being with Mother Nature alone. Right? Entering Mother Nature. Penetrating Mother Nature. And being alone in the bush. in the wilderness.
It's metaphor.
you know,
Bush.
building a fire, in the bush. And
Oh man, yes,
it very much. I would give it as a challenge.
yes.
To
Go on a
young
trip
man.
alone.
Yeah, lose your virginity in that kind of a way.
Yes.
Into the wilderness. It's one thing to go alone, like into maybe a new country where they don't speak your language. That's another great kind of adventure.
Yes.
But to go into the wilderness alone,
Right.
is even another thing.
Yeah, I remember taking this trip with my bike I took a flight to, I think, Bergamo. I had a bike, and then I started riding across the Dolomites, the mountains. Mortirolo.
Where is this?
This is in the north of Italy. Gavia, the Stelvio, these epic climbs, And I would go, I think it was a week or so, and I would climb a mountain and be in a certain place, and then continue traveling that way. It's so gorgeous, It's so great to do that by yourself.
Yeah, I remember 2009. I'd always wanted to see Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France, and he had retired, and I thought I lost my chance forever. And then he came back, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta go!
2009.
I can live the dream,
Yes.
Like he's coming back. I have another chance." And I was like, I really feeling like called to go, but man, like the same kind of things. Well, it's not it doesn't fit the business plan. How would I do it? Just so many kind of practical unknowns. And I started speaking about it, and I had a friend, Monica, and she would journey through Europe all the time, like in her VW bus, and she would go and she would camp out alongside the road. And I remember her telling me about this, and it just sounded so like, wow, just like, just through Europe, and just to be free and explore, and it was a beautiful, dream.
Yes.
And then she said, she invited me to come. She said, "Come stay with me, and you can take my VW bus, take my bike, go and chase Lance in the mountains." And it was the most beautiful invitation, And I said yes to it. And I remember going over there, and then being like day after day, the Tour de France, a 3-week race. From one day to the next, I'm just like, well, I'm going to work on some business ideas a little bit more, Just funny, because I know you're going to bring up what I'm doing here. And about biking too, about cycling. But one day to the next, I'm just finding myself in her office working. And it was so great to be with her. And I'm in Germany, and everything is German. It's a whole new world, but still, like, I'm not chasing Lance in France. And when it finally came down to it, finally she's like, the race is coming to an end, and she packs up the van, the vehicle. She puts her mountain bike in there. And then she comes up. She's like, "Michael, get out of here, go! Everything's in them." And she basically had to kick me out to go live my dream.
By a woman.
It was so embarrassing, because she'd come to my great event that's about making a stand and all this stuff in Austin, and here I am, like, not chasing down my dream. And then when I got out there and I got onto the road, I was like, then it kind of hit me. Like, the fear that I had a vague sense of in the office. But it's so funny, because you guys can say, like, we can say, "Well, I'm not afraid." Yeah, but that's because we create a little cocoon so we don't have to feel the fear,
That's nice.
You get out and then you get present to, like, the thing that you kind of knew you were afraid of, but you didn't really feel because you'd created a cocoon.
It's like guys talking, when I challenge them to talk to women. I'm not afraid to talk to women.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, that's the cocoon.
Yes.
You are.
Yes. Well, I got out there, and it's like, I can't read the signs on the street. I don't know the rules of the road. And I think, and I got to drive through Germany, make my way to France, and I can't really read the map either. And I get into France, and it's all in French, and I'm on my own, and I got to find my way. I try to talk to people; they can't understand me. You know, it was a great experience. But I remember, I'm not going to tell this because I think I've told this too many times. The story, you know, when I make the epic climb up Mont Ventoux, but it was. I remember, and I get to the top. I'm on the mountain the entire day, and it's really cold. The wind is blowing. It's cold in the shade, but in the sun, I'm burning. Like it's burning my skin. And I'm getting burnt, but I'm also freezing to death at the same time. And it was misery. I haven't slept. I'm like drunk with Belgian beer. I'm wiped out from the mountain climb. And the race is not ending for hours and hours. And I'm suffering up there, living my dream, but suffering. And then Lance comes by like this, boom, and he's gone. And I'm like, there was no joy in that. I barely snapped the photo, and it was on the ride down the mountain. And I saw everyone together, everyone celebrating. No one's there alone. They're all with their groups of people, and the Basque people were like the wildest in northern Spain, you know, and celebration, singing, dancing, hugging, and I'm alone going down this mountain. And I had this awareness, like, it's the race is all about the party, the togetherness. And here I am alone. And this is kind of a different thing, I guess I'm talking about. There's a beauty in that richness, but what I'd realized was how alone I was in life and how little freedom I had to actually connect with people. Now I'm talking about the whole other kind of adventure, but then for the next 10 years, what I did was go into the wilderness of connection with people.
But you realized that because you went alone.
Yes.
And because you went on that trip, and you told me this before, you know, it was not being able to climb that mountain. It was not seeing lands. The victory in some way was that you did it. You went out there alone. You know?
And here's the thing, like, you know, we can choose this impossible victory. But a lot of times the magic that happens and the thing that we really needed was something that was not in our conscious mind. Like the gift, the miracle, the blessing, the true victory that's waiting for us is something that we don't know. Until we head into the unknown, we won't know what it is.
I would say always. That's where the real learning is. That's where the real encounter is in the surprise, in the unknown.
And the
Yes.
transformation. But we have to.
You have to
choose
show
a
up.
victory.
Yes.
You have to say, okay, I'm going for this.
That's what I say when you go for what you want, what you desire, then you will receive what you need. But you have to go. You say, this is it. This is my goal. I'm giving everything, and then you can surrender because you're going to be given something completely different.
And now we come back to the conversation we were having the other day, where guys try to choose their own transformation.
Yes.
And I do it myself too. You know, half the time I'm doing that. But I really truly know the magic and the transformative power of throwing myself into the unknown. But so they'll try to navigate inside of their comfort zone, their growth, their next step, as if the them that they are now knows what they need to know to become the man that they want to be. They don't, because they're not that man yet. Mm. You know? So one of the best things they can do is go hang out with the men that they want to be, because those men can call them beyond their comfort zone into the wild, where real transformation in the direction of that man can happen. But it's going to happen far slower and a lot less, and oftentimes doesn't happen if they need to stay in control.
Yes. So it's both, you know, you got to go 100%. I think it's great, you know, you see the transformation that you want and you try to seek it out, you know, but you got to be aware that the real transformation is outside what you think, because that's comfort thinking. That's outside there, and it's in surrender. And so to be open to that is a great strategy. And I really like to like look for who could be examples of how I would like to be, how I would like to become, you know, and be around that, and be open to like, yeah, something completely different, and the fact that you're scared about certain things, like you hear a call, and you're a little bit scared to go in that direction. That's a great sign. That's the great sign that you need to go there. It's not the fear of like, I'm going to jump this, but you hear a call, you feel in your loins, I want that, and then you see all the things that make you scared. Yeah, that's another confirmation. That's the path. That's where you have to go.
Yes. I was just thinking now, like, who are those men who invited me, not necessarily by their words, although sometimes, but with who they were, who called me into the wild. One was my grandfather and his son, my uncle, who lived a large part of their life in the wild. But another one was my father. And my father was always going into that was like where he nourished himself, was out in the wilderness. I remember when he was going through the divorce with my mom, and the years before that were difficult, he'd go in the mornings on these long runs, like miles and miles. And I think that was his time to be alone, his time to be in nature. And I remember he would come back like from a run in the cold, and there'd be icicles dripping off of his mustache and beard, and it was like the wild man has returned, you know. And if I talk about my dad, I don't think about a wild man. He was a good man. He was a dentist. He was successful. He did kind of like, he was on the straight and narrow with the religion, with life, with all these things. And but in that way, he was the wild man. And like when I was a boy, he took me and my brothers. In the Mormon religion, they really honor that time, that male time, that sacred male time. We'd have like father and son outings when it's just the fathers and sons in the church who go out for these camping trips for the weekend or whatever. And you do think just with men, it was great. And then I was in the Boy Scouts, and my dad was often participating in that. And I remember this one hike we were on through the Appalachian Trail. It was a 5-day, 50 mile hike. And we're carrying like 50-pound packs on our backs. And we're just like, I'm like 12, you know. Just this little dude with this huge pack on my back. You know, maybe I weighed 100 pounds, you know, and I got a 50-pound pack on my back. And, you know, it's uphills and everything. And I think it was one of the last days, and it's one of the last mornings. And my dad and this other guy, they've been talking shit to each other the whole way, you know. And the, you know, just the macho, you know, who's the whatever. And so they decide, okay, we're going to have a race, you know. We're going to have a race in the morning. So we're doing all this hiking and everything else. We're already worn out. And they're going to do like this, I don't know how many mile race. So they take off in the race, and all the boys are watching. You know, like we're all watching. It's like my dad, you know? And it's another boy's dad, and then the other guys. And I'm like, come on, Dad. You know?
Oh, wow. I remember now my father racing.
Yeah.
With the bike, you know, and that's the same kind of thing.
And we had the fire going. It's cold. And I remember, I had a little... My thing during this thing was like I would take these little cigar-shaped sticks and light them up, and I would inhale it into my mouth and puff it out, which is kind of rebellious because, you know, Mormons, you don't smoke. But so, like, I got my little thing, and I'm like, we're trying to, you know, we're waiting for him to come back, like, through the trees, around the bend, whatever. And finally we see him coming, and it's the other guy.
Fuck!
It's the other guy who came back, and I think he won. But then we hear the real story. He cheated. Like my dad went the full distance, and the other guy turned around at the same point in time, but well short of the distance. So, but just these stories of being like out in the wild. Oh, I have another story. I have to tell this.
Before you tell it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Imagine this. We're in Brazil right now. you know, and we're doing these talks, you know, is this the biggest adventure we could be living? Because maybe, you know, maybe even to bring it, and if we do programs like we're starting next week, are there bigger adventures we could be on?
Yes.
You know, I was saying before.
Oh, man, we have to invite guys out into the wilderness.
Yeah, but imagine. I was saying before, maybe I can go to Spain and do my Camino. You know, he said, well, how are you going to do the program that we're starting, the mastermind? And I'm thinking, well, yeah, how would I do it? Imagine we could run it from there.
Yeah.
Find a way to run it from there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be more conducive to what we're trying to say? So, tell your story.
Yeah. And I could be on my journey and in Arizona, Utah, spend some time in the mountains. Yeah, it could be great. Yeah. Be fueled by that spirit of the wilderness.
Spirit of adventure.
What? Okay, so I must have been, I don't know, early 20s. And I made a trip out to Arizona to be with my father, spend some time with my father. And we go off. He'd organized a hike. It was, it might have been a Mormon thing, like fathers and sons. But it was a small group. It was, I don't know, maybe 12 people total. And we hike, you know, we're going to hike into a camping spot. So we hike a ways, you know, a couple hours maybe. And the sun's starting to go down. And I take off on my own, you know. I leave campground and I take off on my own. And I think I kind of had a sense like that, I don't know, I just wanted to, you know, explore by myself. But I think I also had a sense, I don't know, anyway, my dad organized like a search party after a while to come looking for me. And I think I wanted to kind of test them or, I don't know, something, just not have them worry about me, you know. Maybe I had a sense that my dad was too, I don't know, protective or something. And so he organized a search party, and I watched them go by. I let them go search for me because I'm like, come on, I got this, you know. And then I walk back to camp. And this is for me the interesting part. There's a guy back at camp. He's an older man, and he's just sitting there like carving a stick or something. And he's just carving something, and he looks up at me. You know, he's not surprised. And he's like, you know, yeah, they went looking for you, and he's like, yeah, I told him you were fine, you know, and I felt so like seen by this guy who was not worried about me. And then there's my dad and this other search party that are like, you know, like they got to take care of me. And I just remember that thing, and it's kind of like that thing about my grandfather. He just had this, like, I got this. I'm a human. I'm a male. How long have humans been on this planet? Fine, in the wilderness. We made our, yes, we created civilization, but before that, how long did we live in the wild? Forever, you know? So, yeah, and that's the kind of man I want to be for, you know, calling out these guys. Just affirm that they have what it takes.
Yeah, it also means that, I think personally then, it also means that maybe I shouldn't try so hard to have a guy go on his adventure. You know? He has it. If he doesn't, that's okay too. The purpose of sending the boy out into the wilderness to become a man and come back and not to worry about that is not only that, oh, well, he will make it, but if he doesn't, that's okay too.
Yes.
You know, if he doesn't go on an adventure, I'm speaking for the man, that's okay too.
Yes.
You know, and not try to make that happen. Not try to save that boy who's in the wilderness.
Because if you push too hard to make it happen, his experience will be that he's doing it in part because you made him do it, or you wanted him to do it, or it was your force that got him there, as opposed to him answering the call on his own.
But it's not just the trust. Like when you go out, it's not just the trust that, oh, humans have been doing that. It's okay, you know. But also, if it doesn't work, that's okay too. You know, if you die, that's okay. You know, if it's not trying to save that, not trying to monitor, not try to babysit, not try to.
It's the confrontation with the wild and with death that transforms you. It's that transforms you. You have to confront it yourself.
We're never more alive than when we're under menace.
And I'll end with this. In the Mormon religion, you know, the idea is that a young man is called to go on a mission. And he can refuse the call or answer the call. But what he's doing up until the time when he's called is he's hoping he gets called.
Right.
Like they really honor that, going on a mission. They really honor it. And I remember me and my younger brother Dave, we used to march around the house with the scriptures, and they had this song, and this Mormon song, I hope they call me on a mission when I have grown a foot or two. And we would just like march around the house in our little suits with our religious scriptures.
I don't know why I see a Simpsons episode in this.
Yes. But it was great. And the idea is that you're preparing yourself for this call. And you hope you get called because you might not get called. It's not like necessarily God calls everyone. You know, so you want to be ready for the call when it comes.
Oh, are you hoping that you get called?
Maybe we should call fewer men. Wait till they show themselves ready.
What we're saying, are you hoping that you get called?
Notice when they're ready and then call them.
Yes.
I think we should really do that with this other group that we're talking about, this new...
secret.
Yes.
Shh, what are you talking about?
Doesn't exist. All right.
El primero regla de la es de no hablar de see you tomorrow.